knows works.
Yeah.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Hello, YouTube Live. Welcome to Wellness Coach. My name's Stefan Ravalli. I'm a host here at Wellness Coach. I'm also a host of the Surf Conscious podcast and a meditation and mindfulness teacher. And today I'm joined by Suzanne Jewell on a exciting new series on how to be a mindful entrepreneur. Hello, Suzanne. So good to have you. Would you like to take a moment and introduce yourself to everyone listening?
I would love to, Stefan, and hello to everyone on Wellness Coach. This is Suzanne Jewell. I'm the mindful entrepreneur myself. I've actually been walking the entrepreneur's journey since I was 15. In my current iteration, I am a startup coach at Babson College, and I also teach mindfulness throughout the Miami community, both within the nonprofit space and a lot of the co-working spaces. And I also am the host of Mindful Mornings Miami, and I'm just honored to be able to spend some time with you here today.
So excited to crack into this endless expertise and experience you have and talk about entrepreneurship, not just that, but the power of mindfulness when adapted to it. So let's start with a practice before we begin, but I want to remind everyone that this is an interactive session and to please take advantage of those very powerful features and talk directly to us in the chat box, in the Q&A box, leave any questions you have and put up your hand anytime. We'll enable your mic. You can talk directly to Suzanne, tap into her expertise like that. And just a reminder that although we're so happy to see you on YouTube Live, we can't communicate with you there. It's a one-way street. The features only work on the app, and you have to go to the Google Play Store and the Apple App Store to get the app there. All right. So did you have a practice in mind to drop us into today's topic, Suzanne?
I actually do, and it's going to be a practice of curiosity. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to invite everyone to become very mindful of where they are seated. Take a dignified seat. Feel your feet calmly touching the earth. Have a strong back and a soft front. If you feel inclined, you can close your eyes. Otherwise, you can just let your gaze go to a 45-degree angle and soften your focus. I'm going to invite you to leave your emails, your busyness, and your business at the door. And in this practice of open-minded curiosity, we're going to be inquisitive about our current experience. As you begin to settle for just a moment now, become curious about what it actually feels like to have your body brushing up against the chair, the cushion, the couch, wherever you might be seated. Take note of the sensations. Is it a hard, stiff surface? Is it soft and pliable? Be curious about now also what it feels like to have your feet on the floor. In this moment, with the gift of gravity, you are being held to this little blue marble moving through space. How does it feel to become conscious that your feet, which have taken you all across the globe, wherever you've gone, every day, every moment, and every breath of your life, is right now adhered to the earth beneath your seat? And without trying to change anything and simply becoming curious and aware, asking yourself, what is the state of my body in this moment? Am I open? Am I present? Am I paying attention on purpose in the moment, non-judgmentally and with curiosity? When you're ready to flutter your eyes and come back into the room, were we together, one of the first things I would suggest is let your gaze land into someone else's eyes so that you can have that beautiful little smile once you're done.
Thank you so much for that, Suzanne. And hello to those of you just joining us. Today, we've got Katie, Stephanie, and Trish. Good to see you guys again. Hello, Julie, And a couple of new faces. Welcome, guys. So do let us know if anything came up during that practice you'd like more clarity on. Leave those questions in the Q&A box and the chat box. All right. So Suzanne, what a great start to the session, because just prior to going live, we were talking about, what an entrepreneur is. This person willing to venture into the unknown and accept all the risk and uncertainty therein. So if you want to start by elaborating a bit on what this practice might have alluded to, the role of curiosity, conscious curiosity, and mindfulness in being an entrepreneur.
I'm blessed in my journey to have experienced it. Like I said, for the first time at 15, I had a sister who was an entrepreneur in the retail space, and she gave me a chance to venture out. And one of the things I think that's so fascinating, people don't think about when they hear the word entrepreneur, is we don't often go back to the root of what it means. And entrepreneur in French actually means that you are someone who is willing to venture forth. You are going to engage in a business activity of some sort. There is a high propensity and risk of failure, and you choose to do it anyway. So the idea of being an entrepreneur and this concept of risk and the open curiosity is the fact that you are actually choosing this uncharted path, and you're innovating and iterating as you go. And for those who are tuning in that might be in a corporate setting, the entrepreneurial mindset applies here as well. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's your side hustle or you're about to make a switch out of the corporate space into your own gig. And it might, and yet it really means, do you have the ability to be with what is in your environment and freshen your eyes, come to it with curiosity, look at it for the first time?
All right. And firstly, Katie popped in with some comments on that practice. She said, wow, thank you for that practice, Suzanne. I was able to truly give myself mental space from my work and worries.
Awesome. Thrilled to hear that.
All right. You have talked about entrepreneurship, not just as something that we like do or embody in, our own business off on our own, but something that can be applied to our role within an organization. So did you want to elaborate more on that? How you can be an entrepreneur pretty much, I guess, anywhere by the sounds of it.
You really can. I almost think that while one has the courage to understand what it means to be an entrepreneur, I'd almost then say equivocate the word entrepreneurial mindset equaling innovation. Because I think, and you and I were talking about this, Stefan, before we started, before everybody came on live, that we're in a time right now, it seems, where there's a lot of disruption of fixed systems. It kind of doesn't matter. It doesn't seem like anything is sacrosanct anymore. Everything's finding a new iteration, a new way of showing up. And so it really is a mindset that in the positive psychology world, you mentioned it was originally from Carol Dweck, that the idea of having a growth mindset, and if you're looking at the neuroplastic side of neuroscience, that would be how neurons that fire together wire together. And so you're actually impacting your neuroplasticity, or you have a fixed mindset. And when you have that fixed mindset and you take the wisdom of the ancients, of the sages, and bring it in, they will say that there is a lot of room in the mind of a beginner and very little room in the mind of an expert. So that concept of what's the mindset is really the most important thing, whether you're in a corporation, your dad's plumbing business that you inherited, like we talked about, or whether or not you actually are saying, you know what, I've always wanted to do this, and I'm going to go out there and I'm going to learn how to create the pain point and figure it out and iterate and then reiterate and actually become an entrepreneur. So it is really more a mindset that applies also even to your own life. When you switch out things in your own room, your own environment, you change the energy in the living room if you change your furniture.
Right. And it sounds like there's a certain amount of humility required. What you're saying now, I just think of a Zen master saying the same thing, like, I cannot pour into a cup that is already full, and Carol Dweck says, like talented, intelligent people actually struggle to thrive sometimes because they get attached to their ability to always be competent. And so they're too afraid to do things where they're not shining like they do in their original areas of expertise. So how does mindfulness actually help us break into these new areas that might actually, be full of us struggling and stumbling? And fumbling.
If anybody happens to be looking behind my right shoulder, you'll see one of my favorite books there called Dare Greatly. And I actually have a phrase that I've riffed on from Brene Brown, and I call it Dare Greatly, Fail Mindfully, and Pivot Positively. And there's one of the things within the context of mindfulness practice that just fascinates me and also has held me as a container a lot of times in my entrepreneurial journey, because I went from being a corporate global television executive to actually iterating and creating my own branding strategy marketing business, and then landing all sorts of interesting clients, from the Gates Foundation to fashion designer Diane von Furstenberg. In that journey, part of what I realized was if I didn't learn how to embrace failure as a teacher, then failure became what you just said, a highly intelligent person knocking my head up against the wall. And what is the definition of someone who continues doing the same thing over and over again and not changing? That's the definition of insanity. So within that context, one of the most important things that we can catch is, how often can we go back to that plastic space? Even think of Play-Doh. How often can we be flexible? And when we're embracing failure as a teacher, we can look at it and go, okay, what was this for? What was this here to teach me? What did I learn and how did I grow? And then all of a sudden, the failure doesn't become a problem. It becomes a gorgeous gift of a lesson.
All right. These are some powerful lessons here to leap into the unknown. Guys, I'd like you to apply this thinking to where you're at right now. What kind of change do you want to see in the industry you're in? And I guess I'm talking about, looking at what external change is required, but you're also talking about looking at yourself and seeing what internal change is required as well. And so what practices do you use to always remain sort of self-aware throughout this entrepreneurial journey into the unknown?
So one of the most important things, Stefan, that I actually do is I have this little visual image. I should probably send it to you so we could share it with the viewers at some point. Looks like a little stick figure going up to the desk at a hotel. And atop it says a little hand scrawled sign that says emotional check-in. And I'm always, when I'm in whatever I'm doing, dropping in and going, okay, what is it that I'm experiencing at this moment? And one of the most important things I've learned to do is let my felt sense in the body, the embodied experience I'm having. Like if I, for example, am going into an experience and I'm in a boardroom and I'm about to have some sort of a presentation, and I can sense the anger in the room or the tension in the room is so thick I could cut it with a knife. One of the most important things is I let myself tell the truth about what I'm aware of. And then I make certain that I breathe with it, because one little trick most people don't know is that the average lifespan of any given emotion is 90 seconds. So if we have something that arises and it challenges us or it triggers us or it activates us and it pulls our attention away from focus, if we can be with it, if we can recognize it, name it, and claim it, we can actually ride out the wave of it as long as we don't feed it, and it'll take about 90 seconds for it to arise and for it to eventually to dissipate.
Right. And so we're waiting until we're not feeling, I guess, charged with the wave that's arising, waiting till we can see things from a more still and clear place.
Yes.
And we don't have to wait that long, I guess.
No, we don't.
I've had someone ask before, what's your solution to, let's say I need to act now. I don't have time to wait for this emotion to pass. Some people work in very high paced situations where it's just like, go, go, go.
I am a adrenaline junkie, so I resemble that remark. I get it. Try working in the television industry and having had your boss, who was a billionaire, launching a satellite in China, and Variety magazine and Hollywood Reporter were standing with you. And as you are there for the press conference, the satellite blows up and everybody's there live. So yes, I didn't have time to go sit on a cushion and become Zen. I needed to pivot immediately. So while daring greatly and realizing that was a very mindful fail, I had to pivot on the spot. One of the things that's most important is not talking about that action. It's talking about if you have a practice that has already offered you a foundational capacity, that when that happens, you know how to breathe immediately. Like, okay, this is going to be difficult. in this moment, I'm aware this is going to be challenging. And if you know, for example, how to have a square breath, breathe in through the nose, hold for 1 second, breathe out with an exhale for the same amount of time or longer on the exhale, you'll actually make sure you still keep oxygen into the prefrontal cortex and the front of your lungs. Because when you're in that moment of needing to be triggered, it's like what Dan Siegel teaches. This is your spinal cord, this is your amygdala, this is your prefrontal cortex, and what you just described is when you flip your lid. And the only way to not flip your lid is to make sure you keep allowing oxygen to be present in your experience. You'll be able to navigate the storm a lot better.
All right. I feel like doing that practice now. Let's say I just opened a restaurant and it's built around this chef's food and he's throwing pans and threatening to walk out unless I give him half the restaurant. I need to act now or food doesn't get made. Let's do the practice.
All right. So let's do this. This is great. I love it. He's going to give me a great challenge. So again, let's take a dignified seat. Let's become aware that in the way that we take our seat is how we meet this moment. Have a strong back and a soft front. And just as Stefan offered to us right now, we're going to drop into an awareness kind of 18 inches from our head, right between our heart and our head, about what it would feel like in the felt sense of the body of that kind of an intense experience. We're in the kitchen. There's a very elevated and escalated experience of tension occurring. There's the sound of pans being thrown about. Feel this for a moment. Does your stomach get a little topsy-turvy? Do you have a jangle in your neck that kind of always activates when you're tense? Does your breath start to come up way near the throat and no longer be in the bottom of your lungs? What I'm going to invite you to do is breathe in for a count of 6 through your nose, hold for 1 second, push out through your lips like a straw for a count of 8. 6, 1, 8. Breathing in through the nose for a count of 6. Hold for 1, push out like a straw for 8. Do the turn, breathe in for a count of 6 through the nose. Hold for 1, push out like a straw through the lips for 8. Do the turn one more time, in for 6. Hold for 1, out for 8 through the straw, letting go a little bit of a sound now. Now I'm going to invite you to check back in with the felt sense of the body. Do you have any more clarity or space where that tension lives? Do you feel like you are capable of being present and staying present in this moment? Open your eyes and come back into the space. And that was only 3 breaths. But the magic is in between 3 and about 5. And if you practice it, the beauty of our nervous system, not just our neurons that fire together and wire together, but the beauty of our nervous system that I just taught you is that a lot of people in tension will do a deep breath in. And actually what they're doing is activating their sympathetic nervous system when that happens, which they will increase their heart rate. By actually allowing the oxygen to move around in there, they're bringing it into the lungs and the front of the prefrontal cortex where your rational, logical mind is. And when you push out for 8, you're actually, think of a parachute, you're offering the parasympathetic nervous system an opportunity to rest. So the most important thing, whether you keep it as the 618 calming breath or the 618 anxiety breath, is that your exhale always nourishes the parasympathetic part of your nervous system. If you practice that before you get into Miami traffic like we do, you'll be much better to deal with it when the traffic hits the fan, as it were.
Wow. Yeah. I didn't know there was anything in the world of mindfulness that could help with Miami traffic stress because
there is. That's the practice.
What's a greater threat to anyone's life at every moment than being in Miami traffic? So if it can work there, it'll work anywhere.
And it also works really well in the 10 items or less line when the person in front of you has 22. I've tried it.
Oh, crime against humanity, huh?
Yeah.
All right. Eric Cruz has left a comment saying he's loving the examples you're giving.
Beautiful.
And definitely keep those questions and comments coming, guys. This is an interactive discussion. Let us know anything that comes up for you, any guidance you need in your journey, not just as an entrepreneur, but as an employee that wants to also be a change maker. We are at the 20-minute mark, but I have a couple of boxes to tick here. If anyone's got to be on their way, be on your way. But if you have a minute, I have another couple of questions for you, Suzanne.
I'm down. Bring them on. That's great.
Great. All right. So we've talked about being a change maker within an organization. And some of us might say, well, my field isn't really ripe for change. I'm in accounting or whatever. Or they might say, I've inherited, my in-laws cleaning business. Literally a page out of my book. I dabbled in helping run a cleaning business for a while, which was a fascinating chapter in my history. That doesn't feel like an industry where I can be a change maker. It's not glamorous enough. It's just cleaning. You're just getting it done. So, so how can you create change in industries that don't seem like there's possibility for that?
Well, the first thing, again, going back before there's action, the first thing I'm going to revert to is practice. And this is definitely taken from many wisdom traditions. And one could mention the names of many monks, and that is either in the Buddhist or in some of the even Christian traditions, that one of the most beautiful things to do is to learn how to turn anything into a practice of contemplation and meditation, including, but not limited to, washing the dishes. Because the point isn't always about the external change. It's about what you are bringing to it in terms of your mindset. That maybe if it is washing the dishes, the idea is, wow, I had enough food to eat today, so I'm going to actually wash the dishes with gratitude. Or I happen to be if I'm in a collective community, today's my turn to take care of the kitchen. Or I'm in a co-working space, today's my chance to clean up all the dishes everybody left in the sink. Let me feel some gratitude that this is my moment of service. So it's not always necessarily about changing the exterior or always disrupting. The disruption might be in the way that you are holding it, the way that you are actually bringing your presence and your attention to it. My teacher, Jack Kornfeld, has written a book that's probably the most brilliant piece on this, that says, after the ecstasy, the laundry. So after we've had a great big win, or we might have had a peak experience, and that could be an Oscar, or it could be, an investor in our company, we still need to remember our social security number. We still need to do the laundry. And so even with what might appear mundane, that sometimes can become a very engaged practice of, I'm washing the dishes. Let me feel what the warmth of the water feels like. Do I have soap that smells like basil, or does it smell like lavender? Or is it really springy and it smells like rain? All of that will bring you into the moment of literally being present. Let me but do my work this day, and let that work, if it happens to be mindful attention, be what it is that you're here to do in that moment.
Such important advice, because most of our lives are not these big wins, these big payoffs, these big peak experiences. Most of it is just routine daily activity anyway. So if you're not making that count, then you're missing out on a lot. And I'm going back to a great yogi, Swami Vivekananda. He says, do anything, build sewers. He said this in the 19th century, build sewers. It doesn't have to be glamorous at all, and doing it with the right intent. And you are doing the same work as a monk, meditating in the mountains.
Yes, this is it. And I'm wanting to call out, I'm seeing Trey and Felix there as friends who are here that tuned in. Thanks, guys, for showing up. Thanks for listening. I saw that. I just wanted to say thank you for being in the room with us today.
Yeah, thank you, guys. Great to have you here, and been such a good discussion so far. One more question I want to throw at you from Katie, who's always got some great inquiry here. Thank you, Katie. In the Q&A box, we've got, how can we help to establish a more mindful environment at work when the leadership doesn't see that as something beneficial?
It's such an interesting question, because, you can go through that 10 items or less line and see Time magazine with mindfulness all over the cover of it. It's kind of hard to avoid it nowadays. And I literally am breaking entrepreneurial boundaries, having conversations where last Friday I worked with Miami-Dade College and their president of a campus to bring mindfulness to their leadership. So I understand the context of that question. You have to do a little bit of brave, deep breathing in this instance and kind of sit really tall and dignified, but arm yourself with some of the most amazing scientific evidence-based research that exists out there. For example, I'll give you one of the most valuable pieces that you could share with your management in your leadership. It is a Harvard Lazar Lab study, and it states 47% of the time that we are vertical, so not when we're sleeping, when we're vertical, we are not present or paying attention to actually where our body is. So if you take that and lay that onto the 8 hours or 10 that most of us are at work, and you purely look at the fact that there is a new trend now called presenteeism. It's not about you not being at work in your body. Your body's in the chair. Your fingers might be on the keyboard. Presenteeism means you're present but not checked in. You might be sad inside because your cat died the day before. You might have a sinus infection. They're finding out that the inability to train attention, just because of that fact of the 47% of the time, our mind is either in the past, on the argument we had last night, or we're shopping in the grocery store in the list that we've created in the future. We're not here. So if I were the head of a corporation and someone came to me and said almost 50% of the time that we employees are engaged, we're not here, that right there would catch my attention.
All right. Wow. Powerful call to arms. I want to try that. One more question if you have time.
Yeah.
It's a great one, actually, really important one. How do I not let the hard decisions of business say no? Well, like saying no, for example, when I know it lets someone down, how do they let that not weigh them down emotionally? That's from someone anonymous in the Q&A box.
So repeat that one for me one more time.
How do I not let the hard decisions of business, like saying no? For example, when I know that might let someone down, how do I let that not weigh me down emotionally?
Got it. So, it's an interesting thing. And I don't know if anyone has ever seen this little 2-minute cartoon that Dan Harris has done about how mindfulness is a superpower. It's a gorgeous little piece, by the way. And it talks about the concept that some people think that mindfulness is going to turn you into a ball of mush, and that like all of a sudden you're not going to be strong or you're not going to be able to have that capacity. One of the most important things when you do develop a practice, you end up really coming to an awareness of a lot of compassion for yourself and for others. And yet you also still, like I mentioned before, have to remember your social security number. So there's that lovely thing of staying present, also having an open heart to be engaged as a manager, and then realize that if you know that this difficult thing had to be shared, maybe you find a compassionate way to say, look, this weighs on me a little bit that I need to tell this to you about the boundary, or that I can't approve of this engagement or this expense. And yet I do need to adhere to the principles of the way that we run this business. And so you are actually helping yourself stay grounded by offering some structure. It's not meant for you to necessarily become, like I said, a mushy sort of blob.
Yeah. Show me a point in history where anyone practicing meditation or mindfulness was passive and wasn't a change maker. They always were. All the Buddhist monks, all the yogis, they were just so skillful at it that, they were able to do so without being divisive in that same way. So people thought maybe they were passive when in fact they weren't.
Well, and I'd even add to that, it's a curious thing that the idea of being soft and strong is perceived as not necessarily drawing clear boundaries. It's a new way of leadership. Empathetic leadership is now literally part of the Stanford and Harvard Business School format and curriculum. So that idea of being able to feel with someone and yet still draw the line demonstrates someone who is heartfully and mindfully present, not just lost in thought.
Absolutely. All right. Well, I'd love to keep talking for much longer, but we're at the half-hour mark and we should probably cut everyone loose now. But thank you so much for such an inspired discussion. I'll pass things over to you now if you'd like to close things off with a practice or some final words.
Beautiful. So I'll just invite everybody to just quietly take another dignified seat, strong back, soft front, knowing that what we do at this time is offer ourselves a moment of taking in the goodness, allowing what it is that we have here shared, listened to, experienced, was to fill our bucket, letting that seep into our being, knowing we could come back to it as a little resource, and giving thanks and gratitude for the fact that we actually came, like brushing our teeth or taking a walk, to replenish the health and the nature of our mind. And as we open our eyes, I would just close to everyone by saying, I hope that today you live, work, create, and play in a mindful way. And I'll see you next time.